Hi everyone, good morning. Today going live with Hi Varishta.
Hi, Madhuri. How are you?
Uh, Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
So to all the viewers today, we are joining live with Varishta Sampath, who is a co-founder of Zista Traditional Products. She's a founding partner and decided to become an entrepreneur with a purpose as soon as she completed her college, which is an amazing thing. She's a sports person, avid volleyball player, and trekker. So, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
So you've done most of it, so I think we can go ahead and go.
Welcome to Turning Point. I
Thank you.
started a small initiative on Mother's Day. My main
Okay.
motive is to create awareness, inspire, and motivate people, focusing mainly on women-oriented issues and kids' issues. It could be emotional well-being, physical health, mental health, child psychology, child development, anything associated with women and kids. And also at the same time, I wanted to collect a lot of inspirational stories to bring together to one platform, and that should be my page.
That's lovely.
Yeah, thank you. So, welcome to Turning Point. So,
Yeah.
let's start with the questions.
Yes.
First question is how and why did you start Zista?
If I have to tell you personally why Zista happened, it's because I was very clear when I stepped out of college that I didn't want to be in a corporate world, first thing.
Awesome.
And second thing, I think it was also because there was a lot of learning in the 1 year of, after college that I learned how sustainability works,
Mm-hmm.
how, how much waste goes out from every household.
Mm-hmm.
Things like very small things that started, impacting lives of these things, right?
Yeah.
I happened to meet like a bunch of artisan clusters at that point. It was me and
Mm-hmm.
Achish who did the road trip. When we
Mm-hmm.
did a road trip, we figured how difficult the artisan life was
Mm-hmm.
because olden days, at least for some years ago, it was not as difficult as what it was right at that point.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from sustainability from their point of view, also was something very difficult because
Yeah.
there was no market acceptance at that point, right? So
Yeah.
gradually things had been declining for them also.
Yep.
So that's how we started Zista. That's how we decided we will do this. And
Mm-hmm.
it was done. Zista started by three of us actually.
Yeah.
I was one, and then Mira's another partner of mine, and Archish. So Archish is more into trekking and sustainability and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Mira was the one who left her 22-year corporate job to join us and join us in this journey. But her turn, I mean, technically speaking, her turning point is what was more crucial because she was into history and things like that, and there was a lot of inquisitiveness to learn what was there and to preserve these artisans. I mean, preserve this culture, right?
Yeah.
Not many of us know about any of these cultures
Yeah.
for that matter. So that was, I think, that was a trigger point for us to say, okay, I think we should be doing something about it, at least
Mm-hmm.
how much ever we can. Because see, we currently work with we work in 14 states in India, and we also work with about 500 clusters.
Wow.
So 500
Mm.
artisan groups as such. So which means we have definitely made an impact to all of their lives for that matter. So that's what makes, that's what we wanted, and that's what we've been doing for the last 4 years now.
That's amazing. I mean, I was inspired when I spoke to Mira, like reviving traditions. I think that's very essential in the current times. Like
Yes.
it's so interesting because I grew up in a village, and
Hmm?
I almost know all the traditional cookware that our
Exactly.
parents or grandparents use. So bringing that back to and passing it to next generations, I felt it's very important.
So the thing is, a lot of people don't know about what it was
Yeah,
to have traditions. I mean, what was used in by their parents or their grandparents. But a
yes,
lot of people also now, when they look at our product range and things like that, there's a sense of nostalgia that's there, which is what brings them back to most of these things, right?
exactly.
If you look at it, I mean, I won't say we've lost quite a few art forms in this process, but we are also trying to revive most of these art forms and say, okay, and look at how stable we can make it more stable, more stable in that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's quite a sustainable journey for now that we're having.
That's an awesome journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go to the next one. So why traditional cookware?
Uh,
Why should
why
we prefer?
traditional cookware is basically because one, it definitely, we looked at it more from the sustainable perspective because, we use a lot of these cookware that, traditional cookware adds a lot of nutrients or, adds a lot of value to the food that you cook. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure most of us are learning that a lot more in the current scenario that we are in, right? We spend a lot more time in the kitchen to figure out what we are eating, how are we eating these things. We don't step out. It is not that easy to step out to a restaurant and pick up food.
Yeah.
But we invariably step into the kitchen and say, okay, let's make something for lunch or dinner or whatever that is. But nobody understands the importance of using the cookware or the what cookware you use
Mm-hmm.
adds a lot more value to the kind of food that you're cooking in also, right?
Yeah.
Say for example, now traditional cookware, one, it's definitely more economical to do it, first thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely a more sustainable option. Like, very honestly, people use non-stick for a year and discard it.
Yeah.
Invariably, you're just adding to the waste, but there is no recycling that's happening there, right?
Yeah.
Whereas traditional cookware goes hands down, right? You use it from your, either your grandparents have used it, gives it to your parents, and then you use it. At least that's how I have seen. I mean, I have grown up seeing this work.
Yeah.
It was never this thing to throw away cookware and buy new ones, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's more, I would say, a more traditional cookware perspective is definitely the way to go now. Especially if
Yeah.
you're looking at more kinds of, minimalism and, sustainable living, it's definitely our way to go for now.
And that's a good point that you see. I remember our parents using, like, those kadais, or those small utensils that they used for cook rice and all. They used it for quite number of years, like more than 10 years, 15 years. Even till today, there might be one or the other utensil in the house which they've been using.
Absolutely, yes. Because that's what they pass on from generation to generation, right? 10 to 15 years is definitely a small number that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I've seen culture teas that have soapstone cookware that come down, that are about 80 years old that my grandmom used and then my mom used and then is what I'm using it. So that way it's definitely a more, and it's a lot of this thing, I would say you have a lot of memories with that particular this thing, which, it rekindles the memories that you've had with your ancestors.
True. True.
So
Very well.
yeah,
Yeah. So we'll move to the next question. So,
yes.
with so much of transition and evolution to non-stick cookware, or like the Western cookware, like how do we go back to using the traditional cookware? What would you suggest? Like,
Very honestly speaking, I think the transition is quite simple. Just
yeah,
that it's a very conscious effort to make. It's not just, okay, one day we'll just throw away we'll change the whole kitchen and we come back to where we started. That's not how this works. That's
yeah,
definitely not how this works. So you need to be aware. That's why we say the Vista tagline is very clear. It is traditional wisdom in practice, which means that we need. It's not about people buying the products, but ideally we would want you to use them, in a proper manner so that you know how to use it. There's a lot of content on the website which says how to use a product. There's a lot of knowledge sharing that happens. That's
yeah,
because that has not come down generations, right? A lot of
yeah,
people don't know how to use most of these products.
yeah, yeah, true.
So it's very important to know how to use a product before you pick it up, right? And it's not very difficult for that matter. Even when you say maintenance wise or usage wise, for that matter, be it seasoning or be it the way you use it is not very simple. Like you have very simple things like you probably don't add tadka in a particular vessel. You don't
Mm-hmm.
keep some utensil directly on the flame. We have something called a tin vessel or EHM, which you don't keep it on the flame directly. But yeah, again, it is used to make rasam, and you can set curd in it. Any other recipe works on it. The only condition with the vessel is it never goes empty on the gas. So it's a
Yeah,
very small change that you make in your daily cooking. This thing. So even for a soapstone culture tea cooking kind of this thing is, people generally have the tendency to keep one cooker and they're done with cooking, right? We've seen a lot of that happen over the years. But what we're trying to say is that's not the only way of cooking. It takes about, say, 10-15 minutes to finish making sambar, for that matter, in a culture tea. It doesn't
mm-hmm.
take more than that, very honestly speaking. But there's only a difference is you don't keep dal in cooker, but you open cook your dal, which is a
Yeah,
more nutritional way of cooking your food also, right? So
yeah,
those are kind of changes that you need to know about or you need to read about before you decide to change your kitchen. And we always tell our customers very clearly, be it customers, friends, family, whoever it is. It's a very slow process. It cannot happen overnight. Like, you just go pick up everything and then you're just lost because you don't know how to use them. So make
Yeah.
it like a very slow process. Start slow and then you can figure out slowly how to, progress with changing your kitchens. Because I see most of the kitchens being, filled with Tupperware or filled with
Yeah.
plastics and non-stick and, every other thing rather than. But when you ask people why they do it, it's because of convenience. But very honestly speaking, traditional cookware hasn't been very difficult. I can tell you hands on because when I set up my kitchen, that's what happened. So it
Yeah.
wasn't very difficult for me to set up a kitchen that was, plastic free. So, and
Yeah.
my cookware also was very, more into traditional cooking rather than look at non-sticks or for that matter, even steel. Yeah, not even steel for that matter. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think couple of years of asking, and that's one of our questions too. So why is like those utensils, the brass utensils, expensive? Do you think that it is expensive? I don't think so. Not this point.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. So if you look at non-stick for that matter, you buy a non-stick cookware every year. You change your non-stick pans
exactly.
every year for that matter. Whereas I think it comes so, but that's not what you do with your iron cookware, right? If for
Yeah,
even for your roti tawa or dosa tawas, you don't change them every year. You use them for easily for 10 years.
exactly.
That's, I
Yeah,
mean, 10 years is a very, a very small number that I'm putting out, but it's a very small number. So you can use it for generations together.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
and
have.
they work wonders. Like it's not just dosas or rotis. You can use the same tawa for everything if you maintain it properly also. So it's not like
Completely.
you're investing on multiple things just
Yeah,
because you're using this one, right? Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's true. Like I agree. Like the dosa tawa, the traditional one, we can use it for multiple things. But with non-stick, that's not the case because like the moment you make dosa, if you make roti on that, the next time you make dosa, it's not going to get it properly.
yes, that's. And
Yeah.
let's talk about the taste also on that. The taste on
Oh,
a iron tawa is completely different from what it is on a non-stick, right? I'm
true,
sure
true.
people, at least we've had a lot of people come back and tell us this is something that I've missed for years because I haven't, I haven't got to eat the traditional or the authentic dosas that they used to make at home those days. I mean, a
Yes.
lot of these factors can also be things like, yeah, the kind of batter that you find, but
Yeah.
it's also to do with the cookware that you're using, right?
True.
It
Uh,
makes a lot of difference.
makes a lot of difference. Like the nostalgic feeling again, what you said is right.
Exactly.
How do we choose or how to start what to choose in traditional cookware? Let's say, because now these days I'm using non-stick and I wanted to get rid of all the non-stick and plastic since long. So, like, if I have to start getting back to the traditional cookware, like, what items do you suggest? Or what type of material do you suggest to?
So I would generally recommend start with iron or cast iron, which is
Mm-hmm.
a very simple and easy transition to make.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing will be start with clay because
Oh,
clay has a life. So
yeah.
a clay cookware will last you only a year or so. It's 12 to 18 months is the life of a clayware. So start there and then you can go on to your soapstone and brass and bronze and things like that. But a good starting point is iron because I'm sure most households rotis and dosas are staple diets, right? That's something that goes on for 3 days in
Yeah.
a week or 4 days in a week for that matter. So
Yeah.
I always tell people if that's what is your maximum usage, then start with your iron and cast iron for making your subsies and things like that. And then you can slowly transition from, to making rice and, you make sambar and all of that in different materials. So that
Mm-hmm.
way the transition is not very difficult, but it's still like you're used to. So once you're used to using a dosa tawa, you can probably look at by getting a culture tea to say, okay, you can make sambar in it or make your dal in it or even make kheer in it for that matter. So
Okay.
that way it's a slow I mean, like I always say, it's a slow process, but it's definitely possible to do it. So you
Yes.
can, after you get on to brass or bronze, there's nothing, it's not very difficult for that matter. Brass or bronze can be, the way of cooking is different, but maintenance wise, it's not any different. So that's
Yeah.
a good start point to have.
So we'll just take one quick question from the you.
Yes.
So if you want to set up your kitchen out of India, how to do it? What all we should get it? Please guide.
Okay, so we do ship outside India. We've been shipping for the last 2 3 years, 3 years now, and yeah, we've been able to do a pretty good job. So you can look up the website. We have a lot of content on the website. You can place your orders over there, and we'll definitely ship it to you. And we can also reach out to us by email so that we'll be able to help you what to get or where to start exactly. See, for people who are looking at just cookware, it's different. For people who are looking at changing their kitchen from, right from storage and things like that, we also have options for that. So we'll definitely be able to help you by email, and you can get it shipped to wherever you are.
That's wonderful. I think you also mentioned like the previous question that we spoke about how to get back to the traditional cookware. I
Yes.
think good insights,
Yeah.
and this adds to it. And we'll take up one more question. Can
Yeah.
I use brass cookware without tin coating?
Okay, brass cookware cannot be used without tin coating for cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So brass as a metal is basically, if you want to keep brass on the gas, it needs to have the tin coating on it. You cannot keep it without the tin coating. It's just coffee filters and davra tumblers that you don't keep on the gas directly. You can use them without the tin coating. But the
Yeah.
tin coating as such, if you don't have access to tin coating where you live, then please don't go in for brass cookware because it needs to be retinned at least, depending on usage, that is once a year or twice a year.
Uh-huh.
So that way, it's not useful if you don't have the access to proper tin coating. It's very important to know that it has to be tin coating and not lead coating for that matter. So please be aware when you say, okay, we're getting our vessels tin coated, make sure you ask if it is tin or lead also, because a lot of people do a lead coating and it's very harmful to do that. So please make sure it's just tin coating and not lead coating for that matter.
So, like as a buyer, let's say, how do I know the difference between the tin coating and coating?
So it's very difficult to do that. Let me be honest with you. It's very difficult to, for a layman to figure out what is the difference between tin and lead.
Mm-hmm.
But very few things are, lead is a lot more darker in shade rather
Okay.
than tin. Okay.
Okay.
And once you start cooking in a vessel and, say about 2 3 times into cooking, and
Mm-hmm.
the food tastes very different for that matter, or food tastes very acidic, then it could be lead. But we generally do the test or lab test, because ROHS test to find out
Yeah.
the metal compositions. And that's how we know what we sell is only pure tin and we don't do lead at all. So we do a periodical ROHS test to figure out what is the metal composition that goes into most of these cookware. And only then only then the quality check is processed.
Okay.
So that's the only way to find out if the difference between tin or lead, at least very accurately that is.
Okay. Okay. I get it. So the next one is like how. So we spoke about like how to start. But which material to choose, whether it is soapstone or clay cookware or
So
a
yeah,
brass.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, like so how as a starter to traditional cookware, how do I choose the type of material used for the utensils?
So like I told you, you start with iron first, iron and
Uh,
cast iron, because cast iron kadais, which you cannot cook your acidic food in it. Even if you cook acidic food in cast iron, you will have to transfer it immediately. You can't leave it in it. Okay, so for your acidic based cooking, I would recommend you start with clay. And if you're, or if you're very confident to start using a soapstone immediately, then go in for a soapstone. And then you
okay.
can transition to brass or bronze. Now, bronze cookware, again, we use mostly for, boiling milk, making sweets, or even making rice on daily basis. You can boil your dal in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing with the soapstone, so soapstone, this thing is it has to be treated for a week before you start using it.
Uh-huh.
Now, the treatment process is something that we either give it to you in writing, or
Okay.
which you can follow the steps to, treat it yourself, and then
Okay.
start using it for cooking. Or we also give you treated version of the cookware, which you can start using immediately. Now with soapstone, the challenge is you will have, even though we season it and give it to you, we always recommend you keep it on gas for about 5 10 minutes every day for a week with starch water in it, so that it gets used to the kind of heat or kind of cooking that you do, right? It's because we treat it at our end. It could
Yeah.
be at very high heat or very low heat also. So the stone generally needs to understand how you use, or at what temperatures you use, you cook. So
Mm.
that's one thing that has to be done for soapstone. And generally, if soapstone is treated well,
Mm-hmm.
they will never crack. If they are
Oh,
not seasoned properly, then there are chances that it could crack. That's the reason why I say when people want to start, you can start with clay and then move on to soapstone, because clay doesn't need any seasoning or anything of that sort. But
mm-hmm.
the life of a clayware is only about 2 years maximum. That is, after which the clay will lose its integrity and you will have to change your clayware.
Oh,
Right. So soapstone is something that you can, once it's seasoned, you can use it for generations of cooking, that for that matter. So that's the thing. And for brass and bronze for that matter, for your daily things like boiling milk or you make rice in it, bronze is something that can be used. It's not very different from using a cooker, very honestly. It takes about say 10-15 minutes to make rice.
mm-hmm.
In fact, open cook rice. I don't even want to say make rice for that matter, because it's like once you keep the cooker 15 minutes, 10 minutes, once the whistle is done, that's how people are used to making rice. But
But
that's
it
definitely,
to
sorry,
cool down. It takes another 10 minutes to cool down the
cool
cooker.
down. Exactly, first thing. But the amount of this thing is, when you open cook your rice, the amount of nutrition value that you're adding to it is way different than what it is in a cooker.
Okay.
So in fact, when I started making dal in a culture tea and not keeping it in the cooker, is when I realized a drastic difference in the taste. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot more, I would say, when you cook in a soapstone, right? It's a lot more natural. You can taste the food. It's not it's not a very, I let me be more the same. It's more natural and not, very acidic for that matter. And not very, for people who cook in a cooker and, then shift to this, will definitely see a drastic change in it.
Yes, yes, and
So,
it's up completely.
yes, it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's mostly about transition to your this thing.
Uh, that's very very good. I mean, I think I got a clear view of like how to start off. But would you also like to add like the properties of each material and how do the each material benefit us?
So yeah, so iron cookware is something that is very basic. Iron addition into food. Like we've seen a lot of people struggling from, anorexic. People are anorexic and people are, struggling from iron deficiencies and, take iron tablets and things like that, which is a lot more prominent in this generation. That is
Yeah.
what I see, right? But whereas
Yes.
traditionally the only thing we did was we made food in iron cookware, which was basically iron addition into food.
Yeah.
So iron addition into food is one of the most important additions, right? That's one this thing. We also clay is because we generally tends to neutralize the acidity factor that's there in the food. So
Mm-hmm.
in clay, you generally cook things that you add tamarind and anything acidic for that matter.
Yeah.
See, Indian food is very acidic. It's not, it is very acidic. So we will have to use something that neutralizes the acidity factor.
Oh,
So that's why we use clay. Soapstone adds a lot of calcium to the food. So
okay.
that's the reason why we use soapstone for cooking. When see most of these traditional cookware, the first thing is it retains 98% of the nutrient and the micronutrients that is there in the food. That's one of the basic reasons why we also recommend traditional cookware over, modernized versions of cookware. If you also look at bronze and brass, bronze is supposed to actually retain the nutrients as well as create a lot of positivity in the food. So if you
Mm.
look at, the Ayurvedic system of medicine or Ayurvedic way of life, bronze is something they recommend, because this is one reason why they say it is because the food retains a lot of positivity in the. That's why if you look at North India, where they use a lot of kansa to eat food, right? The thalis and things that they use to eat food is because of that. That's mostly, I think, how we've covered. So we also have brass. A lot of people ask us why do we use brass coffee filters, and
Yeah.
why do we drink coffee in brass? The reason
Mm-hmm.
is because coffee is supposed to be extremely acidic. Whereas when you make decoction in the brass filter, right, it's supposed to neutralize the acidity factor in brass. And
Okay.
that's how when you drink coffee in brass also, that's how it neutralizes the acidity factor. And definitely people who have had brass filter coffees are, I'm sure, are diehard converts of Kumbakonam filter coffees. Nobody will go back to, the other way of having coffee in this. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I have to change my filter too.
If you're a coffee person, yes, definitely.
I'm a big fan of filtered coffee. So
Good. Then you should definitely get a filter and change.
yeah, we'll do that.
Yes.
I think somebody is asking this question. Tin coated cookware from Zista, should it be recoated every 2 to 3 years?
Yes. Yes. Tin
And do you?
coated cookware, in the sense the brass cookware that have tin coating, yes, they have to be recoated. We do
Mhm.
have workshops currently in Bangalore where we are based out of. We do conduct workshops where you can come and get the coating done. Uh, so that we generally put up social media posts, and you can also reach out to us and we'll let you know when the workshop is and you can come and get it coated. And
Awesome.
what we have is just pure tin. We don't do lead. So if people are looking for lead coating, then we don't do lead coating. We only do tin coating.
And lead coating is not suggested.
It's very harmful, so we don't do the lead coating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so you guys are safe.
Yes.
And also, now that we spoke about like how to start and what type of material to choose, the properties and benefits out of cooking into each and every cookware. Let's get to how the wear and tear, like how easier it is to clean. Because even before this live, one of my friends was asking me like the cast iron when we use sometimes it gets rusted,
Correct.
right? And even the brands, sorry, brass or bronze, like it is very difficult to clean. We end up using those pitambari and all. Her hands get dirty and the color changes. Like it's nice for a day or two, but the next day the appearance itself is like very bad. So how, like, what are your tips on that? Like how easier is it to clean and maintain?
So if you look at traditional cookware as such, iron or cast iron for that matter, maintenance wise, the only thing we tell people is never use a steel scrub to wash any of it. So you
Okay.
don't put a steel scrub on any of your traditional cookware. That's your basic rule.
Uh-huh.
With specifically with iron and cast iron, never wash them really hard.
Okay.
Like don't, if even if it's a dosa tawa, and say for example your dosas are sticking on some day, and you don't take a scrub or anything and scrub it and wash it. Just wash it normally, heat it on the gas, apply a layer of oil and store it. See, the only
Oh,
extra step that you're doing from non-stick is applying a layer of oil and storing it, or you store it completely dry. These are the two things that we recommend with iron and cast iron. And
okay.
generally, when the iron quality is good, you'll notice that the rust, it generally doesn't rust if it has oil, this thing in it. So I've always seen my grandmother use dosa tawas with, she would never wash them. She would make dosas, take a tissue, wipe it, keep it aside. The next day before she makes dosas again, she will just wash it normally with soap and use it immediately. So that way the oil residue that is there from the previous day is further seasons the tawa. So there's not much of maintenance when you look at it. That's the same that goes for iron and cast iron for that matter. If you look at tin, brass, bronze, and all of that, we generally recommend to use pitambari. Is something that we don't recommend because pitambari has a lot of chemicals. So we
Mm-hmm.
don't recommend pitambari because, like you said, it hurts your hands and it becomes all of the this thing. Or we recommend just use tamarind, lime, or even vinegar for that matter. And
Mm-hmm.
it hardly takes any time. In fact, there are a lot of videos on our YouTube channel where we've put up how we clean our utensils also.
Okay.
Copper, brass, and bronze, we just wash it with tamarind or lime, and we wash it like once in a week with tamarind or lime. Otherwise, regularly is just soap. Normal
Okay.
soap is absolutely fine. The thing with copper is it needs to be cleaned properly before you start using it. Uh,
Mm.
it cannot. So once you clean it, the property of good copper is it should always come back to the same shine that it was. It
Yeah.
should, I mean, it can oxidize. See, oxidization is a very common affair with copper and bronze for that matter. Copper is much faster, in fact. So, in fact, yeah, I have one copper, this thing that we have, which you can see has oxidized. But yeah,
Yeah.
if I wash it with tamarind or lime, it will come back to the same shine. It
Yeah.
won't have these black spots for that matter. So yeah, that's the only way to go. I mean, apart from that, maintenance wise, if you look at it, yes, the only disadvantage is they are all fragile. Apart from
Mm-hmm.
iron, every other metal is fragile, and that needs to be definitely taken care of. See, we all definitely speak about the advantages of it, but we also do acknowledge the disadvantage of using a traditional cookware for that matter.
But
So
it's
yeah,
not.
it's not very difficult because I haven't seen so many people be clumsy in the kitchen. I mean, you don't generally drop cookware from your kitchen shelves, right? It's mostly probably, it's not as fragile as, you can put it in the sink and then you put vessels on top of it. It's not a problem. But
Hmm.
if you, it's the problem is only when you drop it. And that's also, I mean, see, bronze and brass also don't generally break. I mean, bronze also might crack over, repeatedly if you drop them. But what
Mm-hmm.
is more fragile is just clay and soapstone. So
Yeah.
that's something that you need to be careful about.
So do we use the same tamarind, lime, and vinegar for soapstone and clay as well? Like, what are the?
Soapstone and clay, the only thing is you can wash it with normal soap. Never use steel scrubs. You can wash it with normal soap. The only thing we recommend is clay once in a while, put it out in the sun. Sun dry
Mm-hmm.
it. It always helps in opening up the pores and, to extend the life slightly.
Mm-hmm.
With soapstone, you can just wash it, dry it, and store it. That's about it. There is nothing different about it from a steel cookware for that matter. So, soapstone is something that you can use as a replacement for your steel. You can use it
Mm.
for everything. And you can
Yeah.
also maintain it the same way that you've been maintaining your steel. It doesn't need re-seasoning. It does not need to be, people generally ask us this question: how do you, if I season it once, is this 10 days process needs to be done again? That's not
Yeah.
what it is. It's just that 10 days process when you start using a culture tape, and then you can continue to use it for generations. Even if people don't use it for say 2-3 months, it's absolutely okay. You can just come back. The only thing with soapstone is you never add tadka in it directly. So that is something that you need to keep track of. Apart
Mm-hmm.
from that, it's more or less the same.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And we also have one more question added to it, and one of the viewers also asked the same thing. But I wanted this to be known to everybody. Are these products dishwasher safe?
Dishwasher safe, I would generally not recommend it. See,
Mm-hmm.
because a dishwasher might hamper the integrity of a metal. So
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't generally recommend using a dishwasher. It's always better to hand wash it and keep it. Or anything for that matter. You can use iron and cast iron in dishwasher, but any other metal I wouldn't recommend.
And also, somebody asked, what is the difference between iron and cast?
That's our most asked question. Yes, so I will answer the iron and cast iron difference. So yeah, iron is basically sheets of iron that are beaten and
Uh-huh.
made into cookware for that matter. Whereas cast iron, the iron is melted and then you make molds, sand molds, and pour into it. See, so if you look at functionality wise, iron is not fragile, cast iron is fragile. Okay. And with
Okay.
pure iron, we only have, if you look at the Zista portfolio, we only have dosa tawas, roti tawas in pure iron. We don't have kadais or, paniyara kalla, apachati, everything is cast iron. The reason is because in iron, you cannot add acidic food. Okay.
Okay.
Be it at any point, you cannot add acidic food. Whereas cast iron, as you use it initially for about say 3-4 months, you can then add some acidic food in it, but you'll have to transfer it immediately.
Okay.
Also, pure iron is mostly used for your fast-paced cooking, and
Mm-hmm.
cast iron is more for the slow-paced cooking because pure iron sheets are going to be really thin, right? So when
Okay.
you make kadais for that matter, they're going to be really thin. So if you forget about it, then it burns like immediately it burns.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with cast iron, that's not the case. Even if you forget about your potatoes, it's still going to be good enough to eat them. Whereas that's not the case with the pure iron.
Pure
So
iron.
that's mostly the basic difference between iron and cast iron for that matter. But yeah, we do also have cast iron dosa tawas, which require some amount of seasoning before you start using it. And
Mm-hmm.
personally, it requires a skill set also. I will tell you that as well. Because as long as, cast iron is seasoned and used a lot more is when it gets better. So for you to bring it to, make it really smooth, it needs a lot of usage. When people say it is seasoned or, it's pre-seasoned for that matter, it's not like you can just take it home and use it. Cast iron is not like that. Cast iron definitely needs to be. So yeah, it's very different with kadais and dosa tawas. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
dosa tawas is what I'm talking about. Is not that easy to use. But yeah, for people who have seen, for that matter, like I said, people have preferences or have seen their ancestors use cast iron and would want only cast iron. But
Mm.
in that case, they know how to use a cast iron.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody is transitioning from a non-stick to pure iron, I always recommend, non-stick to iron, I always recommend people pick up pure iron for that matter, because it's not any different from using a non-stick. You just wash it and start using it. That's how easy it is. So when people are looking at, iron and cast iron, you need to be very clear what you're going to be using it for, and only then decide which one to pick up. See, if the usage is more for vegetables and you make more sabzis kind of cooking, then pick up the cast iron kadais. Whereas if
Okay.
it's more, dosas, rotis, and things like that, then the tawas as such pick up the not pure iron tawas.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's not fragile also, right? Pure iron is not fragile. So
Yeah.
that's one advantage of using this thing. And cast iron is fragile. If you drop cast iron, they do break.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay. I didn't know this. This is a new thing that I.
yeah, cast iron, because it's a mold, right? It's a sand mold that is done. So if you
Yeah.
drop
Yeah.
cast iron, they do break.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
No, I think we got the difference very well now. And there
yeah.
are a couple of questions. Let's answer that. So,
Yes.
can ghee be stored in bronze?
Ghee can be stored in bronze not for very long. It can be stored in brass with tin coating.
Okay. I
Yeah.
think that answers. And also, somebody asked, can you say about brass and bronze too, ma'am? I think they wanted the difference, I guess.
Okay. So brass and bronze, the difference is basically brass is the metal composition is copper and zinc,
Mm-hmm.
whereas bronze the composition is copper and tin. Okay.
Okay.
Now
Yeah.
bronze is a lot heavier and brass is not as heavy as bronze. Okay. And brass, like I mentioned earlier, can be used only with the tin coating for cooking. You cannot use brass without the tin coating at all for cooking. Whereas bronze can be used without the tin coating, and it's not necessary to have a tin coating in bronze. You can use it for everything. Only thing with bronze is if you add acidic food in it, again you have to transfer it immediately. It works exactly like the cast iron.
Okay.
The thing with brass and bronze is something that will last you generations. Even if you
Hmm.
don't coat it, there's no coating needed. Maintenance wise, there's nothing to do. You can just wash it and continue to use it. Whereas brass needs maintenance, you will need to recoat it with tin time and again. Only then
Okay.
is useful. Okay. And
Okay.
look at brass kind of cooking is a lot more fast paced cooking for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
because bronze is a lot heavier. We
Mm-hmm.
recommend it mostly for like I told you, make you can make sweets in it, you can make rice, dal, all of that in it. Whereas
Yeah.
brass is mostly used for again acidic based cooking, because it has the tin coating in it, right?
Yeah.
So people who want to make biryanis and make sambar for that matter, we recommend you use brass with the tin coating in it.
Okay. Okay. I think that answers the question. And we'll just take one or two more questions.
Yes.
Uh, okay. So I have the Zista tin vessel for rasam, and it's been 2 years since I bought. So that needs to be recoated. Does it have?
No, the tin vessel as such is a metal by itself. It does not need coating. The tin vessel, the only thing is you don't keep it empty on the gas, because if you keep the tin vessel empty on the gas, it will melt. Okay,
Okay.
and you never hold the tin vessel with tongs. Those are two things. But tin vessels don't need to be recoated. The metal by itself is used in making the vessel, so you don't need to recoat them with tin.
Okay. And one more question: is it safe to drink coffee in copper glass?
We generally don't recommend hot beverages in copper. It's
Okay.
always better to have cold beverages in copper.
Could you explain the reason for that so that
So,
they know?
like I told you, so the when copper reacts with water or reacts with any substance, right? It's a
Hmm?
more positive reaction when it is cold.
Hmm.
So, for example, you can have cold in the sense water, or
Hmm.
even you cannot have lime juice in copper, because you technically use lime for cleaning it, right? So it becomes corrosive. You
Yeah.
cannot use that.
Hmm.
Even hot water is not recommended in copper. We generally recommend hot water, have room temperature water in copper.
Okay.
Whereas with brass, the reason why I say have hot beverages in brass is because it neutralizes the acidity factor, and when it is hot, the reactions are much faster.
Okay.
So it's a lot better to have that in brass rather than copper.
Okay. I think yeah, that's a very clear explanation. We'll just take one more question.
Sure.
My helper uh, dosa tawa, I guess dosa tawa with steel scrubber, and now dosa is not coming out properly. So what do we do in such cases? Please advise.
So yeah, you can you can re-season your dosa tawas. For that matter, you don't have to come back to us for this.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's the thing with traditional cookware, right? Even if
Yeah.
you make mistakes with it, you can definitely rekindle them to use them, make them perfect again. So
Yeah.
just heat the tawa on the gas completely. Apply a
Okay.
layer of oil on it. Let it
Okay.
cool down. Normal
Okay.
cooking oil that you use, let it cool down. You can repeat
Okay.
this process for about 2-3 times. So
Mm-hmm.
the oil layer that you use generally forms a thin non-stick coating on it. So then you can continue to make dosas and it'll turn out fine. So generally with iron tawas, I also tell people when they want to use the same tawa for making rotis and dosas, right? The days you make rotis, apply a layer of oil, keep it aside. The next day morning, dosas will still come. It's this generally dosas don't come after you make rotis on an iron tawa is because rotis generally tend to dry the surface of the tawa.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah.
dosas don't come up.
Yeah.
That's the reason why we say apply a layer of oil, keep it, and then you can use it regularly for dosas after that.
So I have one more question here from my side. When we spoke about cleaning the dosa tawa, right? So you said to apply like oil. Oil is a key ingredient there.
Yes,
Most of the times, there's always a layer that is formed on the top of the tawa, like that black. I don't know what that coating is. Like,
it's basically the oil residue that's there, which is a
so
very common affair.
how do we get rid of that residue?
See, that's something that you can just once you heat it on the gas, right? With a spatula, you can just scrape it off; it'll come off.
It'll come off. Okay.
It generally comes off, but very honestly, unless and until it's drastically high, you wouldn't want to take it off because that generally helps in seasoning the tawa a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think there's one question. I'm using the copper jug and glasses, but I've noticed black spots on it. Should I clean it with tamarind or lemon to remove the spots? I think,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
We'll take a few more questions after we go through the couple of questions. Uh, so, and also, so now that we spoke about starting and the materials and the utensils that we choose, the properties, benefits, and the wear and tear, clean, everything. So, is it suitable? Is traditional cookware suitable for all the cuisines?
Yes, definitely. So right from see in India at least we've seen from the travel that we have done in the last 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
What we've seen is South India we use most of the cookware in the at least most of the metals and the natural materials in the cooking process.
Yeah.
Whereas in North India we use it more towards I won't say completely but more towards the serving process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So geographically, there's a lot of difference in the way we use cookware, right,
Yeah.
in India itself. But what
Yeah.
I have seen is traditional cookware is not just destined to use just specific recipes. It works for all kind of cuisine. We
Mm-hmm.
make at least I've made pizzas on a skillet on the
Oh,
gas. It's not it's not like you use it in a conventional oven or anything. You can still use it in a conventional oven, but yeah, we can
okay.
make pizzas on a this thing. I've had customers who've made pastas in soapstone. Like basil pesto comes out really well in it, and I was like, yeah, we didn't think of that because we're so used to seeing vata kodumbu and kira in soapstone that I didn't think of basil pesto in culture teas. So yeah, it's definitely, and we've had people make Thai green curry in bronze kadais. So
Okay.
that way, it's not definitely there's no restriction on the kind of cuisine that you're using to cook.
That's awesome. I think it's an eye opener for most of us
Yeah, so
because
I've had customers who've baked bread and all of that and sent it to us. The pictures of that. So yeah, we've in the last 4 years we've seen a couple of quite a different this thing when it comes to these
yeah.
things.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
good. So you raised a good point. So I have one more question associated with it. So when you said you can make pizzas, can we actually use this traditional cookware as a bakeware? Like if I have to use it in an
Yes,
oven, can we
yes.
use that?
You can use the skillets. So the only thing is, you can use iron, cast iron is what can be used as bakeware. Nothing else works as bakeware as such. As far as
Okay.
the experiments that I have done in my kitchen, nothing else works. But iron
Mm-hmm.
and cast iron definitely do work as bakeware, and they work perfectly fine.
So
So
they'll
most
be.
bake most bakeware you'll see has a very thick base, right? So that your whatever you're baking doesn't get burnt in this thing. So skillets, for that matter, have a real thick base. Cast iron, any day are going to be thick. You will never find cast iron that is light. Not that you will find cast iron that is going to be, thin at the base, for that matter. So they work wonders when you have to cook or bake on them.
That's nice. This is new learning for me. Will, I think there's a similar question associated with this concept. Is pizza can be baked on gas with cast iron tawa?
Yes, you can bake on the cast iron tawa. The
Okay.
cast iron skillet or the tawa works the same way. You can make them, no problem.
And there's one more question. Can we use baking soda to clean tawa?
You can use baking soda, but I generally wouldn't recommend it. Try and use your very mild detergents, for that matter. Even when people in India use Vim, I
Mm-hmm.
tell them, dilute it and then use it. Any traditional cookware don't need that many detergents on the surface. A
Surface.
very mild detergent should work.
Okay. Okay.
In fact, for cast iron also you can use salt to wash them. Yeah.
Okay.
So that will also work.
Okay. Awesome. And for the next question, how economical are these traditional products over non-stick or the stainless steel?
I think I answered that question before, but still I'm going to elaborate on how
Yeah.
it's definitely a lot more economical than using, non-stick or anything else, for that matter. So if you look at a simple example, right now,
Yeah.
a non-stick pan costs you about 900 rupees. I think that's what it costs in India. Yeah. Whereas our dosa tawas cost anything between 1,500 to 1,800 range, right? Now you spend 900 rupees every 10 months or every 12 months, for that matter, when you
Yeah.
change your non-stick cookware. But when you invest, say, about 1,500 or 1,800 rupees, the reason why I say we invest is because most of these cookware are an investment to make. We don't consider them as an expenditure because they are something that you're going to be using for generations, right?
Yeah.
Unless you decide you get bored of it and throw it away, nothing is going to happen to it. You can just use them for generations. The
Yeah.
same thing with iron, cast iron, or even bronze, for that matter. It's I wouldn't say is very expensive or very this thing, because the amount of effort and the raw material and the this thing outcome out of these utensils is definitely way higher than when compared to other things, right? So when people talk about products being expensive,
Mm-hmm.
we also try and explain about how much of work that goes into it. So if you look at most of our portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
they're all handmade products.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at, we work with these clusters, and they've now become families, right? Slowly,
Yeah.
it's grown into a larger family. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. Like, we've tried to, give them tools, or do a lot of research to figure out how to make their work easier, and increase their capacity to make cookware and things like that. So it's a very important aspect to look at these things rather than look at just the money aspect out of it, right? So
Yeah.
the effort is what matters more than the product as such.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from, like I told you, if you look at it from an economic background, it's definitely not very. It's definitely more viable to look at traditional cookware over your regular steel or non-stick, for that matter.
Okay. That explains. There are a couple of questions. Can I store dals and flours in brass containers?
Yes, you can. We do have brass containers with tin coating in it. You can use them for dry storage. There's no harm in it. And generally, when you use the containers, the retinning process will last you. The tinning will last you for a really long time. It's not about 2 years. It's only when you're cooking it is the maximum life is about 2 to 3 years.
Okay. Okay. And seasoned oil should be removed or washed before cooking.
I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
I think somebody asked.
Oh, seasoned oil, yes. Sometimes, it needn't be removed. It can just be there. You can just wipe it with a tissue and continue to use your utensils. They don't have to be removed completely, because invariably, when you want to remove that oil, you tend to take a steel scrub and scrub the surface again. So you're back to square one then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
generally, I don't recommend you do that. Just wipe it with a tissue and continue to use it.
Okay. That's wonderful. And please describe about Manipuri pottery utensils.
Oh, so we also do have something called Manipur black pottery that comes from Manipur, of course.
Okay.
That's made of two kinds of stones actually. It's made of weathered rocks and sedimentary rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea of money black pottery is there's a lot of iron in the stone as such.
Okay.
And there's no restriction in terms of cooking in it, right? Like how cast iron, you cannot cook acidic food in it. Black pottery doesn't have any such restriction. In fact, you can use them as bakeware also. I missed that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's no restriction in terms of that. But the advantage with black pottery is it's much more lighter. Whereas if you look at all the other cookware, they are on the heavier side.
Yeah.
So black pottery is something that you can use, and again, there's no restriction in terms of cuisine or ingredients or anything of that sort. And in
Mm.
terms of there's no restriction that you cannot add tadka in it. They don't need seasoning. They're one of the most versatile cookware that you can have, for that matter. It can also be, see, the only thing with black pottery is they are fragile. They're as fragile as clay. So,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have a life. You can continue to use them for however long. I mean, till you drop it and break it, yeah, you can continue to use black pottery.
Okay. Okay. That's. Which plates would you suggest for daily lunch dinner? Brass or bronze?
Uh, we would suggest bronze because bronze or kansa. Brass is something that you cannot use on daily basis for eating without the
Okay.
tin coating in it. There could be reactions which are not right.
Okay. Okay. And the last question here is: once I cooked fish curry in cast iron, it became sour. What would be the reason?
What
I think.
else could, yeah, it could be this thing. See, if you had added anything acidic to it, then it could have reacted. The iron could have leached into the food. So that's the reason why we say till your cast iron is seasoned completely, your cast iron kadais are seasoned completely, don't add
Mhm.
anything acidic in it. Uh, Even if you add anything acidic in it, that's why when I stressed on the point saying at least 3 months is because of this. It could turn, the iron could leach into the food. So that's
Okay.
the reason why it could have happened. So you just have to transfer it immediately, continue to season your cast iron, use it for non-acidic cooking, and then you can, once you know your cast iron is completely seasoned, you can cook your acidic food also in it.
Okay. And so, and in cast iron, right? I think that's one more aspect that I wanted to cover. Like the tangy products, can we cook in cast iron? Is it does it give any
I
reaction?
generally don't recommend it. It does react, yes, because like I told you, unless and until a cast iron kadai is seasoned completely, you cannot use. I don't recommend you add anything acidic in it. So when
Okay.
I say acidic, I mean tamarind, tomatoes, and lime. So these are three primary things that I tell people don't use them immediately. But over a period of time, you can cook, you can even make sambar in it and transfer it immediately.
Okay.
But honestly, if you have options like clay, soapstone, black pottery. You can use all of this to make your, tangy cookware, tangy cooking rather than use it on cast iron. Cast iron
Oh,
is mostly used for making your vegetables that have no tomatoes in it.
okay.
And, people can make non-veg in it. You can fry things in it. All of that can be done. But if
Okay.
you want to make anything acidic, then I would always recommend use any of the natural clay or soapstone for that matter.
Okay. And there's one more question associated with it. So, does the color of the food change when we cook in gas?
Initially, yes, they do turn. They do turn a lot more darker.
Yeah.
So, but that over a period of time reduces. See, when the color changes, it turns black, which is a
Yeah.
natural iron addition into food, which is why you move to cast iron. So
Yeah.
it doesn't change the taste of the food, but it only changes the color, which is
Okay.
absolutely okay. So generally in a new cast iron, if you make something like brinjal or, lady's finger for that matter, the darkness is a lot more visible.
Mm.
So we
Yeah.
generally recommend things, you start with things that have a lot of starch in it. Say, for example, potatoes or even, banana or varka or something like that. It's a lot better to make things like that first. So,
Okay.
a lot of people get worried when things like this happen, when
Yeah.
food color changes and, it like draws you back from actually using it, right? So that's why I tell people to be on the safer side. Start with things like, potatoes and, all of these things. And over a
Mm-hmm.
period of time, you will get used to the idea of it turning, the color changing. Then
Yeah.
then you can continue to use it however you want to.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I think for anybody who wants to start using the products, I think this is a very
Yes.
of not withdrawing back, just looking at the color of the food.
Yes. Yes.
uh, Yeah, so let's go with the next question. So with new so I reside in the US, and Instapot is very very popular here. It's more like the electric cooker.
Cooker,
Uh,
okay.
like one or two to three items. We put rice, dal, curry, everything at once, and it is done. So with new inventions like that, and it is more time efficient. I don't have to stand near the stove. Like I can just go take bath, do something. Meanwhile, the cooking is done. So with new inventions like that, how do you recommend traditional cookware? Like what are the again? We know the benefits, and what is the time efficiency, like the time difference between this and that, and if I
Very
have
on.
this start using this, like what are the tips or suggestions that you have?
So the good example to that would be how I transitioned from stop using my cooker and using, a kalchati to make dal, or
Yeah,
even rice for that matter. I started making rice in a bronze pot.
yeah,
So the time taken is probably 15% less than what it takes in a cooker.
yeah,
Okay, because the heat retention capacity of most of these traditional cookware is definitely a lot higher than your cooker.
yeah.
So generally, when I talk about heat retention, if you make soapstone, if you make sambar in it,
Yeah.
I generally make sambar at about 9:30, 10 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And when I come back for lunch, I don't reheat the food. So it's
Mm-hmm.
when you reheat, the maximum nutrition loss happens, right? I
Yeah.
don't reheat the food, but the food is still warm. It's not hot. I won't say it's piping hot because when I come back for lunch, it's almost about 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
So it's not piping hot, but it's still warm. So
Mm-hmm.
that way, nutrition loss is a lot more lesser, first thing. Your fuel consumption when it comes to cooking in these traditional cookware is definitely a lot lower than your steel or cooker for that matter. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you keep a cooker, you keep it on high flame for say 20 minutes or say even 25 minutes for that matter. Whereas with
Yeah.
a soapstone or a bronze pot, what you generally do is the first 1 minute is on high flame as soon as you
Okay.
put it on the gas, and then it's definitely on low flame. It's not going to be on high flame, and it takes the same 10 minutes to get done. The rice or dal is mostly done in about 10 minutes flat. So you
Okay.
just turn it off and go. So that way you're saving on your fuel also. And it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely not difficult from, it's not any different. You spend the same amount of time in front of in your kitchen when you're using a cooker also. Because
Okay.
if say for an instant pot, you spend about say 15, 20 minutes in the kitchen to take off
Mm-hmm.
everything and put things together and all of that. But here it's mostly, you spend the same 15, 20 minutes and you're done with cooking.
Yeah.
That's mostly it. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's, traditional cookware is definitely the way to go forward. At least in the current scenario that we are seeing, it's definitely our way forward. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think also with more than the time efficiency or the cooking style, I think we are passing on healthy food to the future generation.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that's the point that we definitely have to focus
See,
on.
traditional cookware always spoke about open cooking our food and never close cooking our food, right? There was no concept of cooker or steaming and things like, I mean, say for that matter, even, closing the food and cooking it. It was
Uh-huh.
always mostly about open cooking the food. The reason why that was much more healthy option is because, say, for example, rice, they would always open cook rice so that the excess starch gets out. You always
Yeah.
remove the excess starch, whereas in a cooker, we don't do that. So that's one of the major reasons why open cooking is definitely a better option than closed cooking.
Yeah. I think the live ends in like one minute. So I'll just end this and I'll restart this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And what are the health benefits of using this traditional cookware? Anything that comes to your mind immediately?
I've seen a lot of it actually, speaking. So I've had a customer who started her journey of transitioning her kitchen
Mm-hmm.
with us, in fact, when we started Zista. So she meticulously bought, or it was definitely a slow process for her also. She
Mm-hmm.
meticulously bought things as and when she could.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 years down the journey, she came back to us and said, "You know what? I haven't stepped into the doctor's clinic in the last 2 years."
Wow.
So, and I was like, "How? I mean, I didn't get you." She said, "Very honestly speaking, I have been, pestering my husband to, change my kitchen,
Yeah.
and he always had problems with it."
Mm-hmm.
With things like, why are you doing this? It's a lot more difficult and things like that. Obviously, she had her challenges also when she had to do this.
Okay.
But yeah, when she came back and said, I haven't stepped into the doctor's clinic for the last 2 years, it was definitely a take back for us.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that, you tend to learn when you're in the process of a sustainable kitchen, right?
Yeah.
There's right things from, for all that, even I can talk about my own father who used to have, his day doesn't go on without 3 cups of coffee in the morning. Three is a minimum start for the day.
Yeah.
So, and invariably by the end of the, by the afternoon also, he would complain of acidic reactions and, heartburns and things like that.
Yeah.
It was a small change that we made to the brass filter and this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he gradually stopped complaining of it. The number of cups didn't come down. It was just now, the very small change that it made.
Yeah.
So it definitely has an impact on a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
But like I told you, see, there's no scientific research or there is no, research papers or, a lot of things that are not documented, right, over the years.
Yes.
It's mostly traditional knowledge that has to be passed on. Mostly, sorry,
Yeah.
did that pause? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So it's mostly traditional knowledge that needs to be passed on, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do right now, right? You see the website has a lot of content as to how these products are made, what goes into it, why you need to use these products,
Yeah.
how do you maintain it. Everything is there.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is for us to, as the three of us, generally follow this thing. Whenever somebody steps in to have a conversation with us, even at the store here, we're always open to discussions because we're like, you need to know where to start and why you're starting. There's no point in, just coming by, you pick up a product and walk. It's not about
Yeah.
that. It's about
Yeah.
how you want to do it and why
Yes.
you want to do it.
Yes.
Right. So it's very important to do that rather than, just pick up products. I can be, at 25 or 26, I can be the one who can just go pick up a tawa, come home and be like, okay, now what do I do with it? And why am I using it is something that I wouldn't know
Yeah.
unless I read about it to figure out why I want to use a iron tawa.
Yeah.
So yeah, that way I think that mostly answers your question of why traditional cookware and how nutritious it is to have these at
Because
home.
I think this is something I always wanted, was interested in. But when I looked at your page, I was very much inspired because, as I said, I grew up in a village and I grew up seeing
Okay.
all this. And whenever I used to ask my mom about like what is a scientific reason behind it, they were not aware or probably
Exactly.
not in a state to explain it to us. So like they used to just say like the what do you say, the traditional way of reasoning, but not the scientific reasoning. And I felt
Absolutely.
that is very essential. That's not limited to cookware. Any tradition that we follow, India is a diverse. It has a very rich tradition that we are losing
Yes.
over with time. We
Yes.
need to preserve it back, and that is
Absolutely.
up to you, and I'm glad that I
Thank
could make
you.
it today. And one last
Yes.
question. No, actually last, but one question. Is
Yeah.
Zista confined only to cookware, or do you have any other products also?
We are also into home decor. We are
Uh-huh.
currently exploring a lot of other options as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we see as Zista as such, we want to look at. We started with the kitchen because it was the place where we saw the maximum carbon footprint,
Yeah.
right? So that was a good place to start.
Yeah.
But what we want to do as a whole is we want to look at a home as such, right? How
Yeah.
do you make your homes more sustainable?
Yeah.
That's what we want to look at.
Yeah.
See, kitchen has taken quite a bit of time for us
Mm-hmm.
because see, everything takes a lot of time, or every product addition takes a lot of time because we travel, we spend a lot of time with these artisan clusters to find out, you figure out how they work. You teach them things from, logistics to commerce to everything. You spend about a good 2-3 months with them
Mm-hmm.
to start a product range as such.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of ROHS testing that goes into it. And then, you figure out. So the first thing that we also do is we pick up these products, see how it is useful at our own homes.
Yeah.
See, I understand, at least from our perspective, we understand not everybody spends the whole day in a kitchen, right?
Yes.
It needs to be, it should be able to adaptable to an urban kitchen. It can't be just that, I'm sure we do have Amikalle, Artikalle on our, these things.
Mm.
But I'm not too sure how many people are willing to make that change.
Yeah.
With mixies and grinders, not many people are willing to make that change, right?
Yes.
Whereas it makes more sense to look at, things like how can you figure out what is a different thing apart from Amikalle? Can you make smaller sizes of it because family sizes have shrunk? So we look at how utility based, what works for us, what doesn't work for us. So all of these things take quite a bit of time.
Yes.
So, and thanks to the pandemic, we haven't been able to travel for a while, and no new additions for now.
Yeah.
But we're really hoping things do get better, and we're able to, look at definitely home decor and, things like that.
That's wonderful. We are looking forward to that.
Thank you. We're looking forward to that too, actually.
Yeah, let's just quickly answer the questions here. I took the first step by buying the Sengotai dosa tawa and the brass idli patram. I really need to consult with you to see how I can make my kitchen completely sustainable. Please definitely reach out to Zista. They are
Yes.
answer to all your questions patiently, and I recommend that highly. And this one more. I'm getting my house done up in Mumbai, and from day one wanted the kitchen to be sustainable. But the whole thing was that maintaining these utensils seemed hard from what I have seen from my mom. Yes, anything good takes some time.
And take some effort.
It's an effort. So
Yes.
it's up to you. I would say it's your choice. If you want to
Yes.
healthy food to your next generations, please do that. Please take some
Yes.
down on your movie time, or well, something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Out of time and effort from
I think,
everybody's hands.
yeah, you're here.
Yeah. Does it work? Sorry.
Yeah,
I said it takes some time and effort from everybody's hands to make things work. It's not as easy as what you think it is.
yes,
Very honestly, I think I've seen at least my own household when I wanted to when I wanted to try new things for that matter. Say black pottery was new to me, or
yeah,
soapstone, tin vessels, and iron and cast iron is something that we've grown up with. But
mm-hmm.
when I wanted to try new things, right?
Yeah,
My mother was very apprehensive about it. She said, why these new things? How am I going to maintain it? There's no place in the kitchen. But over a period of time, she also understood that, okay, these things also add value to the food and value to the kitchen. So why not give it a try?
yeah,
We've been using soapstone. I'm sure we've seen most of our households use these things.
yes,
So everybody makes their change, but it's just that it takes some time, and which is absolutely okay. I mean, like I told you initially, it's not something that I want people to pick up products and keep it in a showcase and not figure out how to use it. So even
yeah.
if you're picking up products, please make sure you put good use to them. Because we've also seen people use brass, and they're beautiful antiques being used as planters these days. It
Yeah.
really breaks my heart to see that, very honestly speaking. So that
Yeah.
way, yeah, please make sure it's a small change to make, but yeah, at some point, definitely.
Yes, 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 I agree. And there's one more question. So somebody asked me, can we make baby porridges in traditional cookware?
Yes, you can use the bronze cookware to make it. It's a very, very healthy this thing to do.
Okay.
So we always, I'm sure, as traditionally as kids, we also learned that uh, they would, yeah, I understand they would keep it in the cooker, like vegetables and all that. They would keep it in the cooker and give it to us because we couldn't eat them or chew them. But you can still open cook them and make things in bronze and give it to them. It's absolutely safe.
Mm-hmm.
We have tested our products. The ROHS certification is right, and that's only when. So we did the ROHS basically for one reason.
Okay.
We were very clear in Zista that if at all the three of us are not okay with, we don't want to use those products at home, we will not give it to anybody else. So
Okay.
we wanted to be sure as to what goes into these metals, right? Right from tin. Like I told you, we spoke about the lead, the contamination that happens. So we wanted to be very sure that nothing of that sort is there, and only then we will start selling them.
Okay.
So yeah, that way if you want to cook for infants, you want to cook for children, it's absolutely safe to do it. You can go ahead and do it. It's not a problem at all.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We'll just take one last question. With time, we have degraded in the quality of our utensils. Can I expect the quality of old times in the utensils you sell?
That's a very, very difficult this thing to do, because the kind of raw materials that we used to find those days is not what we find these days.
Mm-hmm.
We have also seen, at least I will say that we've seen a lot of contamination being done. We're
Okay.
trying as much as possible not to have any contamination. See, none of our cookware have contamination, but that does not mean the bronze or the brass will match the quality of what was there in those days. Because what was made in those days were definitely a lot more pure. So when people come back to us and say, we have our antiques, but we don't use them, it is in the attic, we're using them as planters, I'm like, please take them out and start using them to cook rather than use them as, planters. So it's very difficult to say it'll match that quality. But yeah, we've tried to do are best when it comes to these things. See, traditional techniques are definitely still there,
Yeah.
but it's not about. There's also amount of skill set that has gone by.
Yeah.
It's not the same skill set that we have.
Yes.
When things, these are things that are passed on, art forms that are passed on from generation to generation. So it's not going to be the same in everybody's hands.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's wonderful. And also, like, see, in the house, I think kitchen is a mini house again. So most of the Indian
Yes,
we spend maximum time in the kitchen. So make sure that you have a healthy and a safe kitchen, and take
correct.
some effort, put some effort. Try to, if you have any questions, please reach out to them. They're ready to answer your questions.
Yes.
We'll wrap up this session with one last question. So since this show is about turning point, what is any? Do you have any turning point in your Miras? But what is your turning point in your life? Like, how did he, if you had any, how did it change you personally or professionally as an individual? Anything. There could be one incident. Anything.
Very honestly speaking, I stepped out of college in 2015.
Uh,
Okay. And I had a bunch of, as usual, my peers getting into corporate and, working for 12 hours a day and things like that. But I think it was when I was on a trek on the Himalayas sometime that I was like, there is something that we need to do about this. It's not just about, this. And I think my turning point was when I met my tin artisan in when me and Archis were doing our road trip in Kumbakonam. That's when we went to him and they're like, so we're planning to do this. We're planning to start business. This is what we plan to do. And he looked at me and he said, you're what, 25? I said, yeah, I'm 23.
mm-hmm.
He said, go back. What have you studied? I said, I've done my BCom finance. He said, go back, find yourself a corporate job. All this is not for you. Don't play like this in life. Nobody will do these things anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody will buy these things anymore.
Okay.
So I said, I will take your word for this thing, but let's do this once. I'll take 10 vessels from you and let's see how far it goes.
Mm.
So he very reluctantly gave me those 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back. So I think we launched Zista at a particular event in Bangalore.
Okay.
And within about 3 days, we had sold the 10.
Yeah.
So when I went and I decided, I called him and spoke to him, and he didn't believe one bit of it. So I traveled all the way back to Kumbakonam, and I told him, sold all the 10 in 3 days. Now give me more. He was perplexed for some time, and he said, you sold all 10. What did you do? And I said, yeah, we sold. I didn't do anything different. We did sell them, and there is a market.
Uh-huh.
And that was a point when I was like, okay, he really needs the confidence, or he need to rebuild the confidence in them that this is an art form that will work.
Yeah.
Because the next generation after him haven't taken up the art form. So that way it makes a lot of difference. So now when I talk to him, or he's definitely more family, right? So he never discusses anything else with anybody. The first question is, it's never about business also. It's always like, are you fine? Are your parents okay? What is happening in your life? So I think that satisfaction that was there, that moment was something that was way different than anything else. That's what mattered the most when I wanted to, start Zista in that matter.
That's wonderful. I can totally connect to it. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was wonderful. Even for me, it was an eye-opener session. And
thank you so much.
All the viewers who were there today, thank you for joining us. I'm going to post this on my Instagram page, so please do follow Turning Point 0521. You can view whenever you have some time. So, and also don't forget to change your kitchen.
Yes. Thank you so much, Madhuri. It was nice having you.
Thank you. Same here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.